So we found an adjustable bed is really the best, but it's the most expensive, but it allows you to have the most variety of positions. And your sleep partner can have their own bed next to yours with a king-size sheet over it, so you have like one bed when you want it, but it also allows you in the middle of the night to have your own personal adjustments, because everybody has their own personal needs. If depending on your neck tightness, that'll affect your head pressure too, by the way. If you've had neck injuries and your muscles are tight, it'll cut off on your veins draining your head also. So you might need a little higher elevation. And if it's a person who has low blood pressure, they might need a little lower elevation. So you got to play with it. And different times of the night for different people, for the same person, you might want a different position. So, but other ways are, you could take, you can make a wedge. You can buy a wedge. There are foam wedges that are about half bed size, and you put them on the top of your bed and you put your pillow on that so your head goes up. But then your feet are flat and then your head goes up. Sometimes you'll slide down, so it's good to put a pillow under your legs, and that makes that cuts the it makes your lower back straighten out, and so it actually helps you with lower back problems if you have a pillow under your knees. So you should be on your back with your a pillow under your knees and your head elevated. So you can use a wedge, or you can make a wedge with pillows, like one pillow and then two pillows. So you're making like a wedge if you just have pillows, and then maybe like three. So you got to prop yourself up, and that's another way. Another way is to take the entire bed and put blocks on the 2 feet at the head of the bed about 6 inches. And so you put like wooden blocks, and that'll make your entire bed an incline plane, and that'll give you about the right elevation also. But then you will tend to slide down, so you need to put pillows under your knees, under your buttocks area, and that's like a stopper to keep you from sliding down. And a hammock is another option. What you'll discover when you do any of these is after you sleep elevated for one night, the next morning your sinuses will be more open, and if you usually get headaches in the morning, you just won't get them, or if you do get one, it'll be very mild and compared to what it normally is. If you've been sleeping on your ear as a side sleeper, you're going to tend to get ear infections and hearing problems because you're pressing your whole ear, So that prevents proper circulation, and it gets pressurized and inflamed from leaning on it. So you will discover no ear infections after this. I mean, if you have children who are getting ear infections, it's because they're sleeping on their sides. And especially little kids, when you train them, it's so important to train them as back sleepers. And in fact, if you notice, a lot of the cribs that kids are in, the carriers, the head is up. When you have a little kid in a carrier, a little baby in a carrier, the carrier bottom isn't flat. The head is elevated a little bit. And then you take the baby out when he's falling asleep, and you lie him down on the bed, and they wake up because suddenly their head is flat. It's on the same level as their heart, and they get pressure in the head, and it wakes them up. If you leave them in a position where their heads are up, like in the car seat, or leave them in these carriers, or I've been in places where people put the baby in a hammock and swing the baby in the hammock, and their head's up, and they love that. I mean, those kids have no problem sleeping. You can make a hammock with sheets and just put it over your bed just in case, but the baby's not going to fall out, and they're really comfortable. But a baby can't turn over. An infant can't turn over, and that's why if we put a kid on his side or on his belly, and their head gets pressurized, they can't turn over if they're infants. So there's a problem. If the brain is getting too much pressure, all of the brain centers are getting congested. I needed to mention this before. All the brain centers are getting congested. And this is, if the brain center that's congested is your respiratory center, which is between your ears, the brainstem between your ears is where you breathe from. That can affect your breathing, and it does. And it can cut off the breathing and make people stop breathing, and causes sudden infant death syndrome. And that's why they have babies, they're saying put them on their back. Because they know if you turn your head to the side, as soon as you do that, you increase your brain pressure, because your muscles in your neck are pressing on your veins, the jugular, draining your head. So as soon as they turn your head, I mean, they've put electrodes into people and measured brain pressure. And when you turn your head to the side, your pressure goes up. So you put a baby down like that on the bed with the head to the side, the pressure can go up, and then the cells are getting pressurized with no good circulation, and if the oxygen isn't there, the cells will start to dysfunction, and they won't. The whole respiratory center will stop firing right, and that'll stop you from breathing. So these kids now, they put them on their back so that they get proper circulation. They should add, put them elevated on their back. That's what is missing from that advice. But they've already seen a huge reduction of sudden infant death just by making them back sleep. But you want to hear a funny story? Because of that, the head shape is changing on these children, and they're getting flat backed heads and rounder. And because in our culture we're supposed to have almond-shaped heads, they're putting braces on these babies' heads to reshape the skull. Now, isn't that crazy? So it shows you the influence of culture. Because we're used to seeing a certain shaped head, we're going to put braces on and squish a kid's head to the right shape. I mean, this really makes you wonder about a lot. I mean, and they haven't studied any of what I'm telling you yet. I mean, about things like what happens in the brain when it's one shape versus another, and the skull is pushing on certain brain centers versus others. This affects your brain circulation. You know, there's these ventricles in the brain have little connectors, like tubules that connect them, and if there's pressure in one area, it can cut off the circulation in the brain and affect large parts of your body that you wouldn't even realize why is my brain doing this, and it's just because of the sleep position creating this pressure. So the first thing everybody should do this: sleep with the head of your bed elevated, to not only prevent these diseases but optimize your brain so you'll be clearer in the morning. You'll even feel you'll have to sleep less. If you're waking up in the morning feeling groggy, feeling worse than you did when you went lying down in the first place, you know it's something you've been doing overnight. You know, and I haven't talked about other things to think about, like, is your pillow filled with fabric softener smell? Are you know, all of your sheets, what's in them? I mean, you're in your sheets and you're pushing your face against the pillow, smelling all sorts of detergent and fabric softener perfumes all night long. So if you're waking up stuffy and congested, you could be allergic to all the crap in your sheets and all these chemicals that you're surrounding yourself with, you know? So that's another issue we haven't talked about. I guess that's part of the culture, again, of sleep. What environment do we put ourselves in, as well as, you know, are we elevated? Should you sleep naked or should you sleep with pajamas on? Well, the problem with sleeping with a top on, if you do roll around, is you can strangle yourself and cut off your circulation as you move. So I think the best way to sleep is naked, because the sheets are basically a big cloth that you're in, and you can move freely and not have any constriction, because constriction is one of the big problems with clothing. Not to mention, you know, if it's intimate with you, it's going to cut off circulation. If you're wearing underwear to sleep, you know, compressing, the underwear is compressing against your body. Anything elastic holds on by constriction. Elastic should never exist. It's not a good clothing thing. I understand its practicality. It's nice to have something that doesn't just fall down, but elastic holds on by squeezing you. So when you take it off, you get dents in your body, which means you've been cutting off circulation. You do that over the years, you'll have permanent. It's like, imagine a tree as it's growing and taking a band and tightening it on that tree, on a limb. That limb is not going to develop right. It'll have a big groove in it, and its whole circulation is going to be hampered. In fact, you can even cut it off and destroy the limb by girdling it and just cutting off the circulation altogether, and then that limb dies. So everything you're wearing that's holding on by constriction is cutting off some circulation in your body and impairing whatever cells are upstream of that are supposed to be draining down. So you probably want to sleep naked. You want to have sheets that don't smell, that aren't polluting you all night. And you want to sleep with the head of your bed elevated and your feet slightly elevated too. So your buttocks is the lowest point on your body. And sleep on your back. And if you do that, you will prevent so many diseases, and you'll be a different person within a week. But anyway, that's a great discovery. That it sounds almost too simple to be as profound as it is, which is the problem with this. We have another cultural thing, which is the need for complexity in medical care. It has to be complex with elaborate diagnostic tools and a language that's extremely confusing and sounds mystical. It's got to be that way, or we don't believe it. It's just too simple. Somebody must have known. Well, people did know about head elevation for a long time. That's why hospital beds are elevated. They know that certain conditions, like raising the head of your bed for sleeping. If you look at old books with pictures of hospital beds, you'll see like tuberculous wards where people had all sorts of lung disease. They would all be elevated. They knew it improves breathing. So that even when they do surgery for head surgery or neck throat surgery, they have you elevate because it improves drainage.